Captain Vexor stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Military Academy, his 4 eyes narrowing as he watched the latest batch of human prisoners in the exercise yard below. The Academy's crystalline spires stretched toward Proxima's twin suns, casting prismatic shadows across the fortified compound. A sneer curled across his scaled face, revealing rows of metallic dental implants, standard issue for all Draknid military officers. Fascinating specimens. Aren't they, Sir? Lieutenant Zara approached, her ceremonial armor clicking with each step, though rather primitive. Vexor let out a rumbling laugh that echoed through the chamber. Primitive? That's generous, Lieutenant. Look at them, barely able to lift twice their body weight. My youngest spawn has better muscle density. Below, 20 human prisoners moved through their daily exercise routine. The Draknid Empire had captured them during the recent skirmish in the Orion sector, mostly military personnel who had put up what they considered resistance. Vexor tapped the observation glass, bringing up their biological readouts. Their bones are practically hollow, he scoffed, scrolling through the data. Their reaction times are laughable, and their visual spectrum is so limited they might as well be blind. How they managed to achieve spaceflight is beyond me. The Academy's central spire hummed as it processed combat data from across the galaxy. For centuries, the Draknid Empire had studied and cataloged every species they encountered, ranking them by their combat potential. Humans had scored near the bottom, just above the pacifist gas beings of Nebula 6. Commander Krall wants to use them for the junior cadets combat training, Zara reported, her secondary arms organizing display tablets. Says it would boost the younglings' confidence. Confidence? Vexor barked another laugh. Why not let them practice on training dummies? At least those can be programmed to fight back properly. The observation deck filled with more instructors, all gathering for the daily assessment meeting. Each wore the distinctive chrome and obsidian armor of the Draknid military elite, their bodies enhanced with the finest biotechnology in the galaxy. Speaking of training dummies, a gravelly voice announced, the human female in cell block 7 has requested combat privileges. General Thanix emerged from the lift tube, his massive frame casting a shadow over the gathered officers. His scales had been polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the status displays that floated around him. Combat privileges? Vexor's upper eyes blinked in amusement, while his lower pair remained fixed on the humans below. Did she specify which medical unit should receive her remains, or shall we choose for her? The gathered officers erupted in laughter, their enhanced vocal chambers creating a symphony of mockery that reverberated through the deck. None of them noticed the slight smile on the face of the human female who had just completed her 1000th push-up in the yard below. Captain Vexor's mandibles twitched with amusement as the guards brought in the human female. Maya Blackwood stood before the Draknid Combat Council, her prison uniform hanging loose on her frame. The council chamber rose 40 stories high, its walls displaying real-time combat simulations from across the Empire. Perfect, thought Vexor. Let her see what real warriors can do. So General Thanix rumbled from his elevated position. You wish to challenge a Draknid warrior. Perhaps the containment fields in your cell block are affecting your cognitive functions. Maya kept her stance relaxed, hands clasped behind her back. No cognitive malfunction, General. Just a proposition. Your junior cadets need combat experience. You think humans are perfect practice dummies. I think you're wrong. Commander Krall stepped forward, his augmented legs whirring. Wrong? Your species can't even survive a simple acid bath. Our youngest warriors undergo acid immersion as a wake-up ritual. And yet Maya's voice carried clearly through the chamber. Here I am, offering to fight your best warrior. Unless, of course, you're worried about something. The gathered Draknid officers bristled, their scales flexing in agitation. Lieutenant Zara pulled up Maya's combat record on the central display. Subject shows minimal augmentation, no neural enhancements, no skeletal reinforcement. Basic military training by human standards. Which makes this all the more amusing, Vexor interjected, circling Maya. Tell me, human, what could possibly make you think you could survive even 10 seconds against a Draknid warrior? Maya shrugged, the gesture making several officers flinch at its casual disrespect. Maybe I just want to give your cadets a good show before I die. Or maybe she smiled, I know something you don't. General Thanix leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Maya. And what, precisely, would that be? That's the fun part, isn't it? You'll have to accept my challenge to find out." Vexor burst out laughing, joined by the other officers. The audacity. "Very well, human. You've earned your death wish. Who would you like to face?" "Perhaps one of our junior cadets, to give you a sporting chance." Maya's eyes locked onto Vexor's upper set. "No, I want to fight you, Captain." The laughter stopped. Vexor's scales darkened with anger. "Me? I am a graduate of the Imperial Combat Academy. I've conquered 3 star systems." "Perfect credentials," Maya nodded. "Wouldn't want anyone saying I picked an easy target." Commander Krall's voice cut through the tension. "Captain Vexor holds 17 combat championships. He's killed beings 3 times your size with his bare hands." "Sounds like he's overqualified to fight a weak human." Then Maya replied, "Should be over quick, right?" Vexor's claws extended involuntarily. This human dared to mock him? In his own academy? "General, I request permission to accept this challenge." General Thanix's scales rippled with dark amusement. "Granted. Perhaps we should record this for the historical archives. The day Captain Vexor was challenged by, what was your rank, human?" "Senior Chief Petty Officer, Special Warfare Development Group." Maya's posture hadn't changed, but something in her voice made Lieutenant Zara take an unconscious step back. "Tomorrow," then Vexor snarled. "In the grand arena. I'll try to leave enough of you intact for scientific study." Maya nodded politely. "One condition, Captain. No armor, no weapons, no augments. Pure hand-to-hand combat. After all, you wouldn't want to waste good equipment on a primitive human, would you?" The gathered officers exchanged glances. Was this human trying to get herself killed faster? Without armor, Vexor's natural advantages would be even more pronounced. "Agreed," Vexor growled. "Tomorrow, you learn the true meaning of combat superiority." As the guards led Maya away, she glanced back over her shoulder. "Looking forward to the lesson, Captain. Oh, and you might want to polish your scales extra bright tomorrow. Wouldn't want to look shabby in those historical archives." The chamber erupted in discussions as soon as she left. Bets were already being placed on how long she would last. Only Lieutenant Zara noticed something odd in the combat recordings playing on the walls. They showed thousands of hours of Draknid fighting styles, but not a single recording of human combat. General Thanix's voice boomed over the chatter. "Tomorrow we remind humanity of their place in the galaxy. Prepare the arena and alert the medical teams. They'll be busy." Lieutenant Zara sat in the analysis chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing combat footage from Earth. The night before the challenge, curiosity had driven her to dig deeper into human military history. What she found disturbed her. "Computer, replay sequence Beta 7, she commanded. The display showed humans fighting in various environments: dense jungles, frozen wastelands, scorching deserts. Each terrain demanded different techniques, different adaptations. The door hissed open. Commander Krall entered, his chrome implants gleaming. "Still studying the primitive species, Lieutenant." "Sir, look at this." Zara pointed to a particular sequence. "This human, Maya Blackwood. Her combat record is unusual." The footage showed Maya in various combat scenarios. One clip displayed her disarming 3 armed opponents in a snowy mountain pass. Another showed her surviving underwater combat against specialized aquatic forces. A third revealed her adaptability in zero-gravity environments. Meaningless, Krall dismissed. Humans rely on technology to compensate for their weaknesses. Without their equipment, they're nothing. "That's just it," Sir Zara persisted. "According to these records, Maya specialized in something they called adaptive combat integration. She trained other special forces in surviving when all technology failed." The computer displayed Maya's training history. Before her capture, she had spent 15 years conditioning her body and mind. The footage showed her training blindfolded, underwater, in extreme temperatures, always pushing the limits of human capability. "Look here." Zara highlighted a section of data. She once survived 3 weeks in an Arctic environment with nothing but a knife. She adapted local hunting techniques and even trained wild animals to assist her. Krall's scales flickered with annoyance. "Lieutenant, you're overthinking this. Humans are physically inferior. That's a biological fact." "But what if physical superiority isn't everything?" Zara brought up more footage. "These records show hundreds of instances where supposedly superior forces were defeated by human adaptability. The screens filled with historical battles. Humans using terrain to their advantage, turning weaknesses into strengths, finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible situations. Computer, display Maya Blackwood's combat psychology profile, Zara commanded. The analysis appeared, showing patterns that made both officers pause. Maya had consistently demonstrated an ability to identify and exploit opponents' overconfidence. She had developed techniques specifically designed to counter physically superior enemies. Sir Zara's voice lowered. What if she got herself captured on purpose? Kral laughed, but it sounded forced. Impossible. Our security is perfect. Is it? Zara pulled up Maya's capture footage. She surrendered without resistance after disabling our neural scanning equipment. We have no idea what combat technique she's actually capable of. The computer suddenly flagged something in Maya's historical data. Before her capture, she had spent 3 months studying Draknid physiology and combat techniques. She had even written a theoretical paper on potential weaknesses in their fighting style. Sir, I think we should warn Captain Vexor, Zara began, but Kral cut her off. Enough. This human worship is beneath you, Lieutenant. Tomorrow, Captain Vexor will demonstrate why we are the supreme warriors of the galaxy. Your concerns are noted and dismissed. As Kral stormed out, Zara noticed one final detail in the combat footage. In every recorded fight, Maya had worn the same expression she showed in the council chamber, a look of calm confidence that suggested she knew something her opponents didn't. The computer beeped, completing its analysis of human combat adaptability. The conclusions were startling. Humans didn't just adapt to survive, they learned from every defeat, incorporated new techniques, and passed these lessons on to others. Their greatest strength wasn't in their bodies, but in their ability to turn any situation to their advantage. Zara stared at the final footage of Maya's training sessions. The human was teaching others how to defeat physically superior opponents, demonstrating techniques that targeted joint weaknesses, leveraged momentum, and exploited overconfidence. Computer, what is the predicted outcome of tomorrow's combat, based on this analysis? The computer's response made Zara's scales pale. Insufficient data. Human combat adaptability exceeds standard prediction parameters. In her quarters, Maya Blackwood sat in meditation. A slight smile playing on her lips as she reviewed everything she had learned about Draknid combat weaknesses during her carefully planned capture. The grand arena of the Galactic Military Academy buzzed with anticipation as dawn broke over the twin suns. News of the human challenge had spread rapidly through subspace channels, drawing representatives from dozens of alien species. The crystalline dome above the combat floor shimmered with atmospheric containment fields, creating a perfect environment for the upcoming spectacle. Admiral Creeks of the Centaurian Empire settled into his observation pod, his tentacles manipulating complex betting algorithms. 10,000 credits on Vexor, victory in under 30 seconds, he announced to the gathering crowd. 20,000 on under 15 seconds, counter-offered Ambassador Nyx of the Silicon Collective, her crystalline form refracting light across the arena. The combat floor had been stripped of all obstacles, creating a perfect circle 50 meters in diameter. Holographic displays surrounded the arena, showing close-up views from every angle. The medical bay hummed with activity as both human and Draknid emergency teams prepared for the inevitable aftermath. Lieutenant Zara monitored the preparation procedures from her command station. Security scan complete. No weapons, no technology, no hidden advantages. She paused, watching Maya stretch in the preparation chamber. Though I'm not sure that matters anymore. The betting odds displayed on massive screens 1,000 to 1 against the human. Some species found the odds so ridiculous they were placing novelty bets on how quickly Maya would surrender. The hive mind collective wagered their entire mineral rights to a small moon that she wouldn't last 5 seconds. Captain Vexor emerged from his preparation chamber, his scales polished to a mirror shine as requested. The crowd roared in approval. He had removed all his augments as agreed, but his natural Draknid physiology still made him a towering figure of muscle and scales. General Thanix's voice boomed through the arena. Today's combat demonstration will show the galaxy why the Draknid Empire stands supreme. Let this serve as a lesson to all who doubt our combat superiority. The atmospheric processors hummed, adjusting the gravity to Earth normal standards, a seemingly generous gesture that made several spectators chuckle. Maya stepped onto the combat floor, her prison uniform exchanged for simple training clothes. The contrast between her and Vexor couldn't have been more stark. "Final medical scans complete," announced the chief medical officer. "Though I don't see why we bother. Prepare the regeneration chamber for the human's remains." The crowd's excitement reached fever pitch as the starting countdown began. Thousands of recording devices focused on the arena floor, everyone wanting to capture the moment for posterity. Nobody wanted to miss what they assumed would be the most one-sided combat demonstration in Academy history. Only Lieutenant Zara noticed that the human's heart rate hadn't changed since she entered the arena. If anything, Maya seemed more relaxed now than during her captivity. As the final seconds ticked down, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were all about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating humans. The arena's countdown reached 0, and Captain Vexor launched forward with explosive force, his claws extended for a killing blow. The crowd roared in anticipation of first blood, then fell suddenly silent. Maya wasn't there. She had dropped and rolled the instant the countdown ended, sliding between Vexor's legs. Before he could turn, she struck the back of his left knee, targeting a nerve cluster unique to Draknid physiology. Vexor's leg buckled unexpectedly. "First lesson," Maya announced calmly, dancing away from his retaliatory swipe. "Bigger doesn't always mean better." Vexor snarled, his scales darkening with rage. He charged again, this time more cautiously. Maya weaved around his attacks, her movements economical and precise. Each time his claws slashed through the air, she was already gone, striking pressure points that shouldn't have been vulnerable through his scales. "Second lesson," she continued, ducking under a savage roundhouse kick. "Anger makes you predictable." The crowd watched in stunned silence as Maya systematically dismantled Vexor's defenses. She used his own momentum against him, redirecting his strength rather than meeting it head-on. Each time he committed to an attack, she punished him with strikes to joints and nerve clusters. "Impossible," Commander Krall shouted from the observation deck. "She's targeting weaknesses in Draknid anatomy that aren't in any database." Lieutenant Zara's eyes widened in realization. "No, sir. They're in every database. We just never thought anyone would be able to exploit them in actual combat." Vexor launched a devastating combination of strikes, his natural combat style augmented by years of elite training. Maya read his movements like a book, weaving through the attacks while maintaining a running commentary. Third lesson. Overconfidence blinds you to your weaknesses. She demonstrated by striking a particular scale formation near his shoulder, causing his entire right arm to go temporarily numb. The crowd gasped. Even juvenile Draknids knew to protect that spot. How Vexor growled, backing away to reassess. "How do you know our vulnerabilities?" Maya smiled, never taking her eyes off his stance. "I studied. While you were dismissing humans as primitive, we were learning everything about your species. Every fight, every victory, every defeat. We pay attention." She proved her point by sliding past his guard again, this time targeting a cluster of pressure points that disrupted his balance. Vexor staggered, his supposedly superior combat training useless against techniques specifically designed to counter it. Fourth lesson, Maya continued, her breathing still calm and measured. Adaptation beats tradition. The fight had transformed from a simple demonstration into a master class in tactical combat. Maya moved like water, flowing around Vexor's increasingly desperate attacks while systematically targeting weak points in his natural armor. She had turned his size and strength against him, using his own mass to amplify the force of her strikes. "She's not just fighting," Lieutenant Zara observed. "She's teaching. Every move is a demonstration of human combat philosophy." Vexor, growing desperate, attempted to grapple Maya. It proved to be his final mistake. She rolled with his momentum, using a leverage point on his arm to send him crashing to the arena floor. Before he could recover, she had him in a submission hold that targeted 3 separate nerve clusters. "Final lesson," Maya announced to the stunned arena. "Never assume you know everything about your opponent." Vexor tried to break free, but Maya had positioned herself perfectly. Any movement on his part only increased the pressure on his vulnerable points. For the first time in his combat career, Captain Vexor found himself completely at the mercy of an opponent. "Do you yield?" Maya asked quietly. The arena held its breath. Never in recorded history had a Draknid warrior yielded to an unaugmented opponent. Vexor's scales rippled with humiliation and pain. "I yield," he growled through clenched teeth. Maya released him immediately, stepping back and bowing respectfully. The arena erupted in chaos. Betting systems crashed as impossibly long odds were met. Medical teams rushed forward, then stopped, confused by the lack of serious injuries to treat. "She could have killed him at least 7 different times," Commander Krall muttered, reviewing the combat footage. "But she chose to teach instead." Lieutenant Zara watched as Maya helped Vexor to his feet, explaining the principles behind each technique she had used. "No, sir. She chose to do both." The human turned to address the shocked audience, her voice carrying clearly through the arena. "Strength isn't just about physical power. It's about understanding, adaptation, and respect for your opponent. That's the real lesson here today." Among the stunned spectators, datapads were already filling with requests for human combat instructors. The Draknid Empire's position as the galaxy's supreme warriors had just been challenged in the most elegant way possible, not through overwhelming force, but through superior understanding and tactical brilliance. Maya's performance had done more than win a fight. She had opened the galaxy's eyes to a fundamental truth: true combat mastery transcended physical limitations. The age of dismissing humans as primitive warriors had ended in less than 5 minutes of flawless combat demonstration. In the medical bay, Captain Vexor found himself doing something he'd never done before, asking a defeated opponent to explain exactly how they had beaten him. The human martial arts revolution was about to begin, and it would start with the very warriors who had once mocked it. The impact of Maya Blackwood's victory rippled through the Galactic Military Academy like a shockwave. 1 week after the historic fight, Captain Vexor stood before the High Command, his scales now bearing the traditional marks of enlightenment, earned by those who discover a profound truth about combat. "The human did not merely defeat me," Vexor addressed the gathered officials, his voice carrying a new note of humility. "She revealed blind spots in our entire combat doctrine. We assumed physical superiority guaranteed victory. We were wrong." General Thanix, who had watched the match 17 times since its conclusion, nodded slowly. "The betting houses are still trying to calculate the payouts. Several minor species have become wealthy overnight." Lieutenant Zara presented her analysis to the assembly, highlighting key moments from the fight. Maya Blackwood's techniques have applications beyond just countering Draknid warriors. She demonstrated principles that could revolutionize our entire approach to combat training. The evidence was undeniable. Within days of the match, combat instructors from 30 different species had submitted requests to study human martial arts. The Draknid Empire, facing a choice between pride and progress, chose to evolve. "We are implementing immediate changes to our training protocols," Commander Krall announced, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by professional respect. "Maya Blackwood has agreed to establish an advanced combat integration program. She will teach our instructors how to blend human adaptability with our natural strengths." The first joint training session proved revolutionary. Maya showed the Draknid warriors how their natural advantages could be enhanced by human tactical principles. She taught them to think beyond brute force, to understand the psychology of combat, to adapt their techniques based on their opponents. "Power without precision is just wasted energy," Maya explained to a class of elite warriors, demonstrating a technique that used their natural strength more efficiently. "Your scales are fantastic armor, but they also tell your opponent exactly how you're going to move. Learn to use that predictability to your advantage." Captain Vexor, now one of her most dedicated students, found himself mastering techniques that would have seemed laughably weak mere weeks ago. His combat effectiveness actually increased after learning to moderate his strength with precision and tactical awareness. "The human way is not about denying our natural abilities," he explained to skeptical colleagues. "It's about maximizing them through superior understanding." Maya showed us that combat mastery requires both physical and mental evolution. The Academy's combat records were being rewritten. Traditional Draknid techniques were enhanced with human principles of adaptation and efficiency. The results spoke for themselves. Warriors trained in the new integrated style consistently outperformed those using traditional methods. Lieutenant Zara's research department documented everything, creating new training protocols that spread rapidly throughout the galaxy. Species once considered too physically weak for effective combat found themselves mastering techniques that turned their supposed weaknesses into strengths. The true power of human combat doctrine, Maya explained during a high-level briefing, isn't in any single technique. It's in the mindset. Every limitation can become an advantage if you understand how to use it properly. General Thanix, watching a demonstration where a physically inferior species successfully held their own against Draknid warriors, finally understood. We thought we were studying combat science in its entirety. Instead, we were seeing only a fraction of its potential. The integration wasn't without challenges. Some traditionalists resisted the changes, claiming they diminished Draknid combat heritage. But as more warriors adopted the new methods, the results became impossible to ignore. Combat effectiveness ratings across all species showed marked improvement. Perhaps Captain Vexor mused during a training session. This is why humans advance so quickly in space. They never stopped learning, never assumed they had all the answers. Every challenge was an opportunity to adapt and improve. The Galactic Military Academy erected a new monument in its central courtyard. It showed a human hand and a Draknid claw clasped together with an inscription that read, "True strength lies not in domination, but in understanding." Maya Blackwood's victory had done more than win respect for humanity. She had shown the galaxy that true combat mastery transcended physical limitations, that strength came in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest warriors were those who chose to teach rather than destroy. 5 years after the legendary match, Captain Vexor stood at the same observation deck where he had once dismissed humans as primitive. Below, Maya Blackwood led a combat integration class featuring students from 17 different species. Her original prison uniform now hung in the Academy's museum, right next to his polished scales from that fateful day. "Quite a change," Lieutenant Zara remarked, joining him at the window. The latest diplomatic report shows a 40% increase in human-alien military cooperation. Vexor's scales rippled with amusement. "Do you know what the most ironic part is? We captured her thinking we would demonstrate our superiority. Instead, she captured us all with something far more powerful than physical strength wisdom." Below, Maya demonstrated a new technique that combined Draknid power with human agility. Her students, once bitter rivals, worked together seamlessly, each bringing their species' unique strengths to create something entirely new. The galaxy feared humans would conquer through force, Vexor mused, his 4 eyes twinkling. Instead, they conquered through teaching. Not a single shot fired, not a drop of blood spilled. Just one human, showing us a better way. Maya looked up at the observation deck and gave a small wave. Vexor returned the gesture, remembering how she had helped him up after their match. Perhaps, he said, being primitive isn't about physical capability at all. Perhaps it's about refusing to learn from others. In the Academy's combat records, that day was marked as the beginning of a new era, not of dominance, but of understanding.